This is Angela Grayson from the Loving Life Fitness podcast to help others in their fitness journey. All possible.
It's time to wake up. Here we go.
Hello, everybody. This is Angela Grayson from the Loving Life Fitness podcast, and we're here today with Kristen O'Toole. Kristen has a story about her life and what she's gone through and how exercise has improved her life now and into the future. Hi, Kristen. How are you doing?
Good. How are you today?
Doing good. Kristen, tell us about yourself. Let's go way back when you graduated college and what you were doing, and then we'll slowly make it into the other stuff.
When I graduated college, I got a really good job, and I worked at this global PR agency for 17 years. And then I started my own business, and I was a type A go-get-'em person. Then 2013 happened, and I started getting a little pain in my back, and that pain started getting worse and worse and worse. And so I went to a chiropractor, and I went to a massage therapist, and I did all these things, and it got a little bit better, but not totally better. And so finally, by the time I was able to get an MRI, I had to go through what they call step therapy, and I had to do physical therapy and all these things before I could finally get an MRI. So from December to February, it took me to get the MRI. I finally got an MRI, and they said, okay, you're a candidate for surgery for sure. And so I saw the back surgeon in the morning. It was a Wednesday, and he operated on me by Wednesday afternoon. He said it was the worst disc herniation he'd ever seen. And so when I went into the surgeon, I was basically in the fetal position. I was in so much excruciating pain. I just wanted it to go away because it hurt so bad. Then I was in a rehab hospital. They transferred me from, the regular hospital to a rehab hospital because I still couldn't walk. The excruciating pain was gone after the surgery, but I couldn't walk. I went to the rehab hospital, and about a week in, a few days in, I was getting worse, not better, and they didn't understand why. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't see or speak. Little did I know I had a raging infection inside of me that was causing my MS just to go crazy. I didn't know I had. Well, they thought I was having a stroke. They took me down, they coded me, they took me down to the ICU. I got a spinal tap in the middle of the night, an MRI in the middle of the night. I don't remember any of it. The next day, the neurologist came in at the ICU and said, good news and bad news for you. Good news is you didn't have a stroke. Bad news is you have MS. And it looks like you've had MS for, at least 20 years. So my whole adult life, I had MS. I did not know that, of course. And I knew like a coworker and a friend who had MS. So I thought I was familiar with it, but I did not know how individualized this disease was. After 2.5 months in the hospital, I got out and I started doing better. I was just so happy to be home because, in the hospital, you know how it is. It's just horrible. It's just you're waking up constantly, and I couldn't even move in the hospital. I couldn't swallow. It was really tough. When my parents moved me while I was in the hospital, they moved me into a new home, and my newlywed husband and I embarked on this MS journey. And so for the first couple of years, I really tried to walk, and then I realized that was not going to happen. So I've been using a wheelchair since 2014.
So I've heard of MS, but I never really knew anybody with MS until I met you and another friend of mine. You're both completely different cases. But before I met the two of you, I really never knew what MS was.
Like I said, I thought I knew what MS was. I had no clue. Really, it is a disease. It's an autoimmune disease. My body attacks itself. the myelin sheath around the nerves, which is like that fatty substance around the nerves, that's what MS attacks. And it eats away at that myelin sheath. So your nerves are just going haywire all over your body. Depending on where your myelin is attacked and depending on how early you treat this disease really depends on how much better you get. There is no cure for MS, but the disease-modifying therapy drugs actually halt the progression. It doesn't do anything with past damage, but it really helps you from getting any worse. I take comfort in knowing that, but geez, had I known a lot earlier, I would never have ended up in a wheelchair, really. So there are a lot of other symptoms that come with MS. Again, it just depends on you and where your lesions are, where your myelin is attacked. Some people have a lot of trouble swallowing, with speech. Some people have what they call drop foot. So they can walk, but maybe their one foot does not work, so they're kind of dragging it. There are just a lot of symptoms. Your central nervous system is attacked with MS. So it's your brain, your spinal column, and your optic nerve. So some people have optic neuritis, so they can't see. I had what was called nystagmus, so my eyes were kind of fluttering up and down. And I'll tell you, that was one of the worst symptoms I had. I mean, not being able to see, it just not only screwed with my balance, but also constant headaches. It was just, I couldn't wait for that to go away. So finally that went away, luckily. MS has been a journey for sure. For the past 10 years, I have been using a wheelchair. I don't work, and literally I work all the time. I mean, that was my life. I moved from Pennsylvania to Florida to be closer to my family. Just my life is very different. But one thing that I know is I want to be independent, and I've been able to do that, fortunately. And I've been able to do that, thankfully, because of fitness. I have worked very hard. Yes, I cannot walk, but man, I can do a lot of things, and I can do a lot around my house. The hard thing is just knowing when you're tired, you can't go any further. You need to stop. Slowing down and listening to your body is really, really important. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. I mean, your body, I guess, just tells you to stop at some point. I think I pushed myself for a lot of years, just go, 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 go. And I wasn't listening to myself because I had no idea I had MS.
So even before MS, you had the symptoms of being fatigued.
I can look back and I can see, hindsight's 2020, right? I can look back and I can see various symptoms over the years, but they were so vague. They were so all over the place. Like, I can look back now and see it. At the time, no way. And I don't think any doctor would have seen it because it was like all over the place. I was tired sometimes. I never slept well. Just random things that I think a lot of things you can attribute it to stress.
Did your eyesight bother you at all back then? Did you have bad eyesight?
Never.
I did read that that's one of the biggest symptoms of going on with eyesight.
A lot of people get optic neuritis as their first symptom, so they kind of go blind in one eye. It's temporary, usually, and that's what a friend of mine had. So it's horrible because it's scary, you can't see, but it's also a kind of warning sign, and it's also something that diagnoses the disease for a lot of people. But I never had that.
Yeah, when our bodies are doing things that they don't normally do, people think, maybe I'm having an off day, or okay, I'm just not feeling well today. But there's these signs that usually something's going on, and when things aren't normal, we shouldn't really ignore it. Maybe listen a little bit closer, see if it's happening a little more often than normal so that we can go and get checked out. Hopefully doctors listen.
And I've never been one to run to the doctor for everything. Yeah. And so things would happen and I would just be like, no big deal,
Especially when you're so young, right?
Yeah. I was so active, I was doing stuff all the time. I just didn't think about it.
You are one of the most driven women I've ever met. Yes, you are. You are something, Kristen. Tell us about what you are doing now. You said you're not working, but in a way you are working. So tell us what you do now.
I currently serve as a district activist leader for the MS Society. So I do a lot of stuff with legislators, things that are important to the MS community we activate for in Washington and in Tallahassee. This year, I'm turning 50 September 21st. So I decided to try to raise $5,000 for the MS Society and do Bike MS. I've never done a bike race before. With your encouragement, Angela, we are doing Bike MS this year. So on October 7th, the race goes from Ponte Vedra to Daytona. And then the next day, it goes from Daytona back to Ponte Vedra. So there are lots of ways that you can participate in it. You can either do the full ride like that. You can ride from Marineland down to Daytona and just do kind of a 36-mile ride, which again, sounds kind of scary to me. Or you can do virtual rides, and they have them all over the place. But Brooks Rehab, which is an adaptive sports group that I do a lot of things through, they are riding on the trails. So that might be what we end up doing. And it's 18 miles one way on the trail and 18 miles back. So we can do the full 36 miles if we want to. And they have a little lunch afterwards and everything. So I think it'll be very nice.
So anybody can join this ride. You don't have to have MS.
Anyone can join the ride. It's one of the bigger rides in the country, from what I understand. One of the sponsors of the ride is the PGA Tour. It's a pretty big ride, and they end up in Daytona, and it's a big deal.
Yes, and money really needs to be raised to go towards MS because there is no cure as of right now, and they're trying to do research to find a cure, and hopefully what they do on October 7th and 8th will help provide funds to help with that research. Anybody can join that ride, and we will have in our show notes where you can go and apply to ride, or if you would like to donate to Kristen's cause, that would be wonderful.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and let's talk about Brooks Rehab and Halifax Health also, right? Together, that does the adaptive sports.
So Brooks Rehab is located in Halifax Health down in Daytona. They also have a very big facility in Jacksonville. Brooks Rehab has adaptive sports programs. For example, I bowl every other Friday night. They partner with an organization called Oceans of Hope, and they do kayaking and they do surfing, which I've done both. They have pickleball, they have table tennis, they have yoga. There's a lot of things that you can do through Brooks Rehab, and it's all free. Again, I would encourage anyone with an adaptive need to go to Brooks Rehab Adaptive Sports. There's something every day of the week for you. I participate in a lot of that.
Yeah, not only does participating in adaptive sports help you with your physical abilities and help make you stronger in different ways, but also mentally getting involved and trying to be more social, getting out of the house. It's quite a mountain to climb over to even participate and get to know people.
Very difficult to meet people when you don't drive and, you use a wheelchair. It's very difficult. So cycling, bowling, these different things, there's now a community, you know people who do these things. So that's very nice.
An amazing program. Matter of fact, I have another podcast about that was released way back in the beginning of when I started recording.
That's right.
Yeah, anybody can go back and listen to that podcast also with Chrissy Seipel. A lot of good information there for anybody who wants to get involved. Okay, going back to the disease of MS, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into MS and when there's a relapse, what that means and what could happen. Can we talk about that a little bit?
The most common type of MS and the kind that I was diagnosed with is relapsing remitting MS. You kind of go through periods where you're pretty good, and then you can have a bad flare-up. And that just means a lot of times there's another infection in your body and your MS is kind of going nuts. So you have to be very careful when you have MS about infections, about getting sick, about different things, because it can cause your your immune system just to go kind of crazy. So when people have flare-ups, I mean, it just depends on how bad it is. You can have cog fog, which is, just cognitive issues. You can have like all of the things that I mentioned before. You can have trouble walking. You can have a lot of things go wrong. Optic neuritis can flare up. It's very dangerous. So when you have a relapse, you kind of relapse and then you go back to where you were, but there's usually something that kind of lingers. I feel like you never get totally right again. There's always something. The other kind of MS, a lot of people go from relapsing remitting into secondary progressive MS. So that means that the MS just keeps getting worse. Progressive MS means doesn't go back. It just keeps going and going and going. Knock on wood, fortunately, I'm not there yet. And my disease modifying therapy is an infusion that I take every 28 days. An infusion, it just means it goes straight into my vein for an hour, and it's called Tisabri, and it works really well for me, knock on wood. And people go, oh, it works really well for you? Why are you still in a wheelchair then? Well, I'm in a wheelchair because of all of the past damage. You didn't see me 10 years ago, when I couldn't even move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything. So
Eat, couldn't chew your food.
Oh, no. Yeah. And so in the hospital, it was just smoothies and soft foods.
Yeah, thank God for mom, right?
Oh gosh. My mom and my dad came up from Florida and stayed with me in Pennsylvania for 2 months while I was in the hospital. Thank goodness for them.
What a journey that was.
Oh, yeah.
What do you wish everyone understood about MS? And also, what do you wish everyone understood about being in a wheelchair? And those are two big questions, so take your time.
I think with MS, I just wish that everyone would understand there is no cure. We need a cure. And it's so different in everyone. So just saying that you know someone with MS doesn't mean you don't know someone with my MS. I did not understand that whenever I first was diagnosed. It's just so very different in everyone. And being in a wheelchair is very isolating. It's very difficult because you just cannot do a lot of things that you just took for granted before, And everyone acts like it's no big deal just to go places and do things. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to load the chair up, to go places. You just can't do a lot of things. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, since I've gotten into the wheelchair and in the past 10 years, my life has changed so much. Friends, my social life has kind of dried up. Just a very different life that I lead now, than I did before. I'm very fortunate in that I can do my own thing and that I have the resources that I have to exercise. I thank my lucky stars every day that I can do the things that I can do, because I think I would be very miserable if I couldn't,
Yeah.
Just because I'm an independent person.
There are so many people out there with not only MS and other disabilities that are not in the same shoes that you're in and have a real difficult time with just everyday life because they don't have the resources that you do.
I think because things were so bad for me in the hospital and things were so dark when I first got out of the hospital, and I see where I am now, I think if I hadn't have gone through that really, really hard part, I wouldn't realize how good I have it now. There was a hospital bed in my home. There was a lift in my house because I couldn't even stand.
And how old were you?
I was 40 years old. So it was a big change. And I had been married for 2 years at the time. And we moved, I never saw my house again. It was a big change. But I just focused on, okay, I gotta get better. I just have to get a little bit better. And again, I was thinking at the beginning, I was thinking my life was kind of going to go back to normal, the way it was before. And I was thinking, well, geez, I'll be able to walk again. This relapsing remitting thing, well, I'm just in a relapse. I'll just go back to being able to walk again. I'll be able to go back to living my life. Well, I did get better, but I was not able to walk again. I can walk with a walker. I'm just very slow and very uncoordinated.
And you get tired quick.
Yeah. So it's absolutely for exercise for me. It's not a mode of transport. I would never use it really. Yeah. And using the wheelchair, I know I'm not going to fall. So it's a lot safer for me too. I'm not stable enough on my feet to do that, you know?
You need to pay real close attention to your body and how you're feeling on a daily basis. You were saying that earlier, how it took a long time for you to listen to your body. And I know that getting tired is one thing. You have to rest when you do get tired. I also know that getting overheated affects you a lot. Anybody with MS could even cause problems. Do you know why that has such a big effect?
I don't know. A lot of people with MS have heat sensitivity. I know I do. A lot of people do. So heat really bothers me and absolutely cannot get in a hot tub. No desire. I've never had a desire to be a hot tub person. And before I knew I had MS, I did use a heating pad on my back. That was probably absolutely the wrong thing to do. My nerves were probably on fire, you know? Did not know that, you know, I didn't know.
Yeah, you were just trying to make yourself feel better.
Yep, I had no clue. And I think I did a lot of things, massage and chiropractic and different things because I was more comfortable with that and it was easier for me to do that. Well, I needed an MRI. We needed to know what was going on, you know? And unfortunately, the insurance not approved the MRI until I had PT. So I endured like 6 rounds of physical therapy and was getting worse by the second, you know.
That is just backwards.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I had gotten MRI earlier, I may never have ended up in a wheelchair. I mean, seriously, that is how on the line this, you know what I mean? I was able to walk a week before my surgery because I got the MRI on a Thursday night and I walked into it. I mean, I was hobbled, but I was walking into it. And then that was it. Never walked again. So
I don't know why insurance is so backwards. It used to be that you would get x-rays first, maybe a sonogram, and then if they couldn't see anything, then they would send you for an MRI. Find out what's wrong with you first before they start saying, okay, we can deal with this with PT, or we can deal with this with surgery, or oh, wow, look at this, she's got MS. We have to deal with it this way. I don't know when insurance companies changed everything around to where first you go through all these different modes, and then you get your MRI. What a waste of time, what a waste of doctors, what a waste of physical therapy. That costs money too.
Yep.
Why not go through the x-rays, the sonogram, and then the MRI if that's what you got to do? But find out what's wrong with the patient first before you start telling them what you think they should do.
I agree.
Many years ago, I had back pain and I went to my doctor and he was also a chiropractor and he tried to adjust me and it didn't go away. It was getting worse. And I thought I had pulled a muscle because I exercised a lot, you know, did yoga. I thought maybe I did something. So I kind of ignored it until one day I was at work and I couldn't hardly breathe. And I had to go to the hospital, to the emergency room. But right away, maybe because I was in the hospital, they sent me for an MRI and I had a blood clot in my lung. And if I didn't get there when I did, and if they didn't give me the MRI, I could have died. Yeah, this close. Why they've changed things around to where the MRI is the last thing that they do is beyond me. That needs to get changed back to the way it was.
They said they changed it because there was so much abuse in the system. I mean, here I sit, you know, literally in a wheelchair.
And look what this is costing insurance companies, right?
Exactly.
You know, you can't work anymore.
My infusion, they charge my insurance company. I mean, I don't pay for it, but $17,000 a month.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
You know?
Wasn't that worth an MRI? Oh my gosh.
Again, I am over $1 million woman just by the drugs that they have put into me in the past 10 years. I mean, think about that. That's a lot of money. But yeah, I've been fortunate in that my drug, like I've stayed on the same thing for 10 years, which is pretty unheard of. I've been able to stay on the same thing. So that's a very good thing.
And it's still working very well for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most people, they have to keep changing their medications because the old ones quits working as well as it used to. So then you become an experiment to see what the next drug is that will work for you.
And I might not have exactly the right details, but this is about right. In the mid-90s, I think there were 3 MS drugs. They are making progress. It's just there's no cure. So we want a cure. The National MS Society, it helps fund research, but it also helps people like me live better lives. It's a really good organization, and I've been involved with them for a very long time now.
So MS is more common in women than men?
It's a predominantly women's disease, but the men who get it tend to get MS worse. So they tend to get MS harder, if you want to say that. So the men that I know that have it have progressive MS, very severe cases, a lot of power shares, a lot of hospitalizations, just a lot of struggle.
Now, where you live is supposed to have some kind of an impact on people getting MS. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes. The vitamin D plays a factor in MS. The closer you are to the equator, the more sunshine you have, tends to be you have less MS there. So MS was always known as kind of a Northern European disease for a long time. But then people were coming back from overseas, Iraq, different parts of the world, they had MS. So there's a big study going on now through the Department of Defense studying what is going on. Why are these people coming home with MS? There's something to do with, they think that MS has something to do with toxins, so kind of environmental pollution, something to do with genetics, so you probably have a genetic predisposition to it. Who knows? But they really don't know what causes it. So it's kind of a perfect storm, it seems, of a lot of things.
Again, more research is needed.
Oh, yeah. And we always say with research, there's a lot going on now, but it might be the next study that isn't funded that there's a breakthrough.
Yep. That's why we need to keep doing the research to figure it out.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's really important to mention, we talked about exercise a little earlier and how important it is for you, and how with Halifax Health and Brooks Rehab, the adaptive sports program, there's so much offered there. But we also want to talk about exercise for somebody who has MS, to how important it is to do to help manage the symptoms of fatigue, balance, having issues with balance and walking, to prevent falls, and also to stay positive and focused.
That, I think, is one of the best things about exercise. It just keeps you kind of focused and keeps you positive, and it also kind of alleviates some stress that you have. And stress, as we all know, stress is a huge contributor to everything, but it's also a huge contributor to MS. It makes every symptom worse. Everything that's going on with you is worse when you're stressed out. Exercise is great for that. It's also great for balance. Those of us with MS, balance is not our forte usually. I do know that helps me tremendously. And then strength. Just being able to transfer from my wheelchair to my bed, from my wheelchair to the toilet, from the wheelchair to the couch, that's a huge thing. And if you're kind of not in shape, you can't do that. For me, everything I do is all about functionality. I just want to be strong enough that I can do things that I need to do around the house. I don't want an aid all the time. I had to have an aid when I first came out of the hospital. And that's very difficult, financially difficult. And it's also someone to manage, someone that's in your space. It's hard.
Okay, so we're going to keep that exercise going, Kristen.
And it's important for me to have a trainer. I've always had that. I've been very fortunate in that, because I don't know if it's the MS or what it is. It's hard for me to motivate myself, but I know if I have an appointment, I'll do it. It's also important for me just getting the weights and getting the steps and doing the different things. That's a lot of work when you have MS, and you're in a wheelchair. I can't do that stuff when I'm by myself. So it's helpful to have someone else here to help me do different things that I can't do by myself.
And I love being your trainer.
Thank you. I love that you're my trainer.
You have such a positive attitude. It really helps. And Kristen never cancels on me. Okay, Kristen, the other thing I wanted to say about being in a wheelchair, I just want to put this out there to everyone, business owners, about how difficult it is to go places, restaurants, use restrooms, public restrooms for people in wheelchairs. And I never really even noticed this before until I've been a few places with Kristen, and also my mother, who is 96 years old, and I take her places in the wheelchair, and how difficult it is to get in, to get out. Even medical offices who don't have the buttons, they might have them to get inside the building, but to go in the restroom or to go into the different rooms in a medical building or a hospital even. Let's talk about that a little bit, just to make people a little more aware, especially business owners.
People think that it's an expense, but it's necessary. I mean, as a business owner, I literally I won't go to certain restaurants because, for example, there's one restaurant that has the bathrooms are up a step. That does me no good. There's another restaurant that I've gone to that I can't get in the bathroom. It's not wide enough. The doorway's not wide enough. I've gone to a couple of restaurants, even nice restaurants. They say handicap stalls and the stall doesn't close. If you put a wheelchair in, the stall does not close. I don't know. I mean, the disability community says, don't plan things without us. You know, we need to be part of these decisions and part of these, because if you don't use a wheelchair, you would not have any clue a lot of times. You'd say, oh, that stall's big enough. You know, it meets these requirements and we'll put a handicap sign on it. Well, it does not close. So if I go into a stall with my wheelchair, I need to be able to pull the door shut. There needs to be room for me to turn around, you know? A lot of restaurants don't do that. Also, once I transfer out of my wheelchair into a chair, there has to be a place for me to put my wheelchair. A lot of times I don't transfer. I'll just stay in my chair. Like if I go to an auditorium or something. Well, they often don't have spaces where you can just park your wheelchair. There are seats, but then again, like, okay, what am I doing with my wheelchair? My wheelchair is my leg. So I don't really love it being out of my sight. I really don't like people taking it. You know, you just don't know what's going to happen to it. I can't move without it. So it's really important for me to have it.
Yeah, businesses should be required to do things a certain way to make it more accessible. They shouldn't have to figure it out.
Yes.
Like there's inspectors to make sure the electrical is done correctly, the plumbing's done correctly, the roof is put on correctly. This should be part of it when you own a business where people need to come in and have access to the place, no matter who you are.
And you should have handicap parking.
Enough of it, too. You were just involved in legislature to make airplanes more accessible.
The only mode of transportation that is not really accessible is airlines. So I could get on a bus, anything with a wheelchair. You know, there are a lot of things. That's because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And for some reason, the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration, the ADA doesn't touch it, doesn't cover it. Riding on a plane is just horrible. Now, I get on the jetway with my wheelchair. Then they transfer me in the jetway into what they call an aisle chair, which is the super skinny chair that they wheel you down. You don't fit on it, and it barely fits down the aisle. And they strap you in like a straitjacket. They strap your arms and your legs up. It is very undignified. And so you're the first one on the plane, thank goodness, and then you're the last one off the plane. When the gate agents put you in that aisle chair, there's like a gap between the jetway and the plane, about at least a foot usually. So they're lifting you over that. Again, I don't feel comfortable with that. They need to be trained. They're not. So this new FAA reauthorization bill, so the Senate is supposed to approve it. It's to train, make sure that everyone is trained to actually work with handicapped people. All new planes, not old planes, they won't be retrofitting, but all new planes will need to be handicap accessible. There needs to be some kind of way that people can go to the bathroom. Again, I'm flying in October. you just know what kind of preparations it's going to take. And it's just not a fun experience. I just know what it's going to take. And once they kind of dump you into the seat, I mean, you can't use the restroom. There's no way. I mean, you can't get up and go. You just can't do it. I just better pray I don't have to go to the bathroom. So it's tough. I'm going from Orlando to New Orleans. So it's not a long flight.
Well, thank goodness this change has been made. I'm sure it won't make an impact for a long time if they're only doing it on the new planes, because how many new planes do we get to fly on?
Hey, but baby steps, right? Well,
baby steps. There goes that positive attitude. I love you.
When I first started doing all the legislative stuff, because I'm a very impatient person and I like things like to happen. And when I first started doing the legislative stuff, I'm like, okay, I have to remember this is a marathon, not a sprint. And it is slow. I will tell you, constantly are pushing for something. And then a few years later, it's like, hurry up. And then all of a sudden it happens. It's rewarding when things happen because it takes a while, But again, I'm not a lobbyist. I don't have money to throw around, but we activate for things that are important to us. So lower drug costs, which again, is your fruition. Airline accessibility is a big thing. Step therapy, which I've talked about with the wheelchair. That's something we also have been activating for. And I feel like we have a lot of success whenever our organization bands with a lot of other organizations. So, for example, the National MS Society and maybe the Cancer Association, different groups get together and they can push then for something like lower drug costs or something like that, that touches everyone, Step therapy touches everyone. Lower drug costs touches everyone. It's not just unique to the MS community.
Band together.
Yep.
Kristen, do you have a goal for our listeners to strive for so that they can live their best life?
You just have to deal the hand you've been dealt, right? Nothing's ideal. Everyone has issues and problems, and, some are just more pronounced than others. You just have to keep going, right? One foot in front of the other. That's what I'm trying to do.
All right. You heard it, folks. You heard it from Kristen O'Toole. Take some advice. Get one foot in front of the other. And also don't forget to go to our show notes and either get involved in the Bike MS or go ahead and donate to the cause. So hopefully we can see a cure for MS in our lifetime, right? That would be great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
We're looking for a world free of MS, right?
Yes. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for being on the show. I know that our conversation here will bring value to other listeners. Also, I'm hoping that people who don't have disabilities think about how difficult it is for those like Kristen to have access to and be able to get themselves to do what they need to do to live a good life. So what is your excuse? Get off the couch and start moving, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Angela.
This is Angela Grayson from the Loving Life Fitness Podcast to help others in their fitness journey. All possible.
It's time to wake up.